On Production is brought to you by Wrapbook, the production industry's only on-demand payroll platform. With Wrapbook, you can pay your crew with a click and track all your costs in real time, all in one place. To find out more about how Wrapbook is transforming the way productions pay their crews, visit wrapbook.com.
Welcome to On Production, the podcast dedicated to the art, craft, and business of film and television. I'm your host, Cameron Woodward, and today I'm speaking with someone who, after doing some research, I think is an awesome visionary and has reshaped a lot of what it means to bring stories to life after the camera stops rolling in post. So, my guest today is Jijo Reed. He's an Emmy Award-winning producer and the founder of Sugar Studios, which is an all-in-one post-production powerhouse. My old neighborhood's historic Wiltern Theater in Los Angeles. Jijo's fingerprints are on more than 60 feature films, and also, in something that I think is pretty astonishing and I can't wait to ask you about, Jijo is one of the few filmmakers who's personally visited the Titanic wreck site, and I cannot wait to learn more about that. So let's get started. So Jijo, when I was doing my research, I found out that your grandfather was actually the voice of Fred Flintstone, and you grew up in a family that worked in Hollywood. Did you feel an obligation to follow a certain path in filmmaking, or was your career always sort of a journey of your own invention?
I think the answer would be kind of no to both of those. I don't know. Journey of my own invention. That sounds awesome, but I don't know if that is the case. I'll tell you, yeah, definitely. My grandfather was the voice of Fred Flintstone, and it was great growing up with that. And of course, even way before I was born, he did all kinds of movies, and he was a big radio personality in the 40s and 50s, and then he did a lot of TV guest appearances. He was in Breakfast at Tiffany's. He was Sally Tomato in the guy in Sing Sing Prison and Breakfast at Tiffany's. So, but as far as my connection in the industry now, I mean, he died in 1977. I was 10 years old when he died. Yeah, we did grow up in and around Hollywood in the San Fernando Valley, but my family, I wouldn't call us an entertainment family. While yes, my grandfather and my uncle were definitely in the industry. The peak of their careers were, before I was even born, and yeah, so I don't really see it as like I wish I could have benefited somehow. It would have probably helped me in my struggles in the early years if there was, a bunch of connections that were offered to me through my grandfather or my uncles. But, I was a waiter in the valley as a teenager. As a waiter at Jerry's Deli, I washed cars, I detailed cars, washed cars. I even shined shoes at a barber shop when I was like 15 years old or 14 years old. No, I think it's completely separate. It's just by chance that I was able to find a home in this industry. And also, but just being born and raised in this city and being pretty active in social circles and just knowing a lot of people. And plus, I had five brothers and sisters. I have five brothers and sisters, including a twin sister. And primarily, I would classify us more as like a music family. My brother Chuck worked at Interscope Records for 30 years, side by side with Jimmy Iovine since day one, supporting Jimmy in all of his producing and everything. And my other brother Jimmy was a musician in a bunch of LA bands. And my twin sister, she's a chef. My other brother Mike he installs tile in bathrooms and kitchens and all over the valley. So my mom's an artist and my dad is in advertising. So I got into this business just by needing a steady gig. Back in the late 80s, became a driver, a messenger for a trailer company, a company in Beverly Hills that produced movie trailers. And I was just a messenger. And I'm so glad that just by chance I got into that part of the industry because, and mind you, when I got into this company, I didn't have any production experience or anything. It was strictly I was a messenger. But every day I was surrounded by these talented artists and technicians at a trailer house, which had every aspect of film post-production in one place. Because that's the difference between how they like film marketing and trailers and TV spots to create all those. there's these agency houses. There's companies that specialize in doing trailers. It's not just done on the studio backlot, where I think that there's a general misconception, maybe less now, but there's a general misconception that movie trailers are just created by the studio, by the filmmakers of that film, or happen on the studio lot. Oh, they're just going to condense the movie and make a 2-minute trailer. No, there's a whole industry of houses that create theatrical advertising media. And and the reason I bring that up is because what's so unique about the model of movie trailers as opposed to the model of post-production in feature films is with trailers, it's all done in one house. Now these are 2 to 3 minute pieces of content. They're not full-length features. It's easier to house all the post services for short form content in one location than it is for long form, for a number of reasons I won't get into. But
I have some questions for you about how you sort of did see this and then reinvented the studio model. I'm sorry to interrupt you really quick though, because you mentioned also that you came from a musical family, and I believe you're a drummer yourself, right? So like I'm curious in what specific ways sort of your drumming background influenced your own personal editing style before you then actually went on and started building an integrated post sort of workflow in your own businesses.
it's a good question, and I haven't been asked that before, but an extremely valid question. 5 of my employees that are artists here at Sugar are drummers, and as a drummer, it's about rhythm. Editing is about rhythm. It's about flow in a cut and having a musical sensibility. You know, my favorite editors and our best editors are ones with musicality in their souls. People who can look at footage and just and visualize and feel how this take would work with that take and this scene with that scene. It just has to do with, I think, an internal creative rhythm that musicians have, and especially drummers, because drummers are, I mean, by definition, they are keeping time and keeping rhythm. But yeah, I think that when I was really editing trailers, you'd watch the cut, and when you watch when you're watching listening to a song or you're watching a cut, you're basically, see, I'm nodding my head, I'm just thinking about it. You're feeling these different the pacing of the cut, and trailers are all about pacing, whether it's a stop and start or it's higher in the beginning, whatever. The tempo changes throughout trailers, but they all have to be pretty rhythmic, you know. Otherwise, something doesn't feel right. In fact, I just had a conversation yesterday. We were talking in one of our edit bays, and we were saying how if the viewer notices the editing when they're watching something, it's probably not good. And the same is like when you're listening to a mix or when you're watching a movie. If there's something that's just sort of rubbing you or bumping you the wrong way, like editing, I think everything that we do in post production is to and in editing is to create a rhythmic flow that everyone can watch these pieces of content and just kind of be immersed and go along for the ride with it. It's like if you jump into a car, if the car is stopping and starting or, chugging along, you're going to be kind of in the car wondering what's going on in the car and still be looking out the window. But it's much more enjoyable if you're just looking out the window and you're not worrying about how the car's running. Uh, and I think that could be a real crazy analogy, but it seems to make sense. It's all about just going for a ride. You tell me, am I crazy?
I know, I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a certain melody to it. So before I interrupted you about your background as a drummer and sort of how that infused into your observations and being an entrepreneur and building these businesses, you know, I think you were sort of describing or starting to describe sort of how you at Sugar Studios have not necessarily challenged, but innovated in the trailer post-production norms by really integrating full stack. Can you share a specific moment when you really saw where your unified approach improved or even saved a project?
100%. And just for clarification, what we did at Sugar Studios is we applied the trailer model of all post services, the majority of post-production services under one roof. We just moved that over to specializing in independent long-form feature film. So just starting there, what that means is that we have in-house at Sugar Studios, we have editorial, we have color correction, we have visual effects, and we have full sound design and mix services, and also deliverables, which is once the film is completely done and ready to go to networks or distributors, we're able to create all the assets that are needed for that. So, I mean, I can think of a number of occasions where perhaps we're in a color session, a color correcting of film. And this is at a stage in the process where you're working with the final files of a film. You're working with the camera masters that have been, and we're color correcting and grading these files. And we're also working with all the visual effects that have been created for this movie at that stage, hopefully, usually. There's been times where we've been in color correction, and for the first time, we're seeing this footage at a very high resolution. Because when you're editing a movie, you're not editing in high resolution typically. Typically, you're working at a resolution that you may not be able to see every little pixel or thing that's going on. So if you have something like, let's say, visual effect shot, where a simple visual effect shot, somebody like, let's say we were being filmed right now. If this was a scene in a movie, somebody having a podcast interview, what is happening on my laptop screen, this would just be blank when we're filming, right? And then we would composite the image and footage of what's happening on the screen later so that we could edit back and forth and it remains consistent. So this is we just call like a monitor composite. We've noticed in color, we've gone in, and now that we're seeing it in high resolution, we've noticed issues with this visual effects that we may have created, where maybe the edges of the screen, right? Here they are. Maybe the edges of the screen aren't lining up properly as the camera's moving. But we didn't maybe see that in a visual effects review before approving it. So now that we're seeing it at high resolution, we're noticing a flaw, a mistake, or something that needs to be redone. Typically, that scenario would be very costly because let's take into account, for example, the color session that we're sitting in while looking at that high resolution. That's probably anywhere between $300 and $700 per hour for that process. If we have something that stops where we have to go and reach out to a separate visual effects company, find the artist or the producer who handled that specific shot out of hundreds, right, in this movie, have him redo that shot and then and send it back to us, that could take a day. And so the client may have to pay for a whole day of color while waiting for that shot, if that was towards the end of the session. So there's been numerous times where we see a little flaw. We just basically tell our visual effects team, hey, let's fix this comp. Boom, we can have it in 15 minutes, rerun in 15 minutes, and it's in the session. Happens in mix. While we're mixing a feature, we may notice something. Maybe there's a sound effect that isn't sounding right. We can go to our sound department or sound designer who's in-house, and boom, he can show some options and we can drop them into the mix. So basically, when different aspects of post-production are geographically in different places, right? If color is here and audio is in Burbank and visual effects are in Canada, right? It's not very easy, as in a quick scenario, to be able to call upon those various resources in times of need.
That's super helpful. You know, Jijo, you've embraced, in addition to the sort of full stack of your studio, some awesome advances in Dolby Atmos. You've mentioned AI-driven tools, but you, even in our conversation, are like emphasizing the importance of human intuition, the musicality of it. Are there areas in your workflow where you are deliberately maintaining people, and conversely, What emerging technologies excite you the most for their potential to enhance creativity in these workflows?
AI is exciting, and a lot of people are afraid of it in our industry for both creative and financial reasons. They think maybe certain jobs are at risk, and it's funny because I'm asked about AI quite a bit, and as fast as AI technology is changing, it seems to be my opinion of AI kind of, I would say changes. I still really feel that AI can be is a helpful tool that helps s- um, make a lot of processes more efficient for both schedule and budget. It's been very helpful. It saved time. It has surprised us in certain ways that it's been able to generate certain assets for us. I feel personally that there can never be a real replacement for a human being. And that's one thing we're very conscious of here is that our filmmakers tell us all the time that they like the quote unquote the vibe. There's really no vibe with AI. There's no soul in AI. And I think filmmakers will always want to interact with people, with artists, have that human kind of collaboration. But, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. AI will make certain revenue streams for people, you know, invalid. It will help the technical process in a lot of ways, and it does a lot in our sound department and a lot in our visual effects department. But these are processes that a lot of things we would outsource anyway. There are certain processes like in visual effects, there's rotoscoping that if you need a rotoscope, let's say there's soccer players on a field and you need to composite something behind them and they're all running around the field. That's a big, big, big rotoscope job. So a lot of times we'll go overseas for the type of tasks that are quote unquote more utilitarian than perhaps creative. For where we just don't have the bandwidth here to rotoscope 80 shots with 10 people running in front of a building that they need to get rid of. So, um, but AI has improved a lot and has huge advances in that part of visual effects work as well. We see a lot of AI now where there's generated images, but it's not that easy. It's by the time you see an AI image or a visual effect shot that we can use, there's been so many back and forths with, the prompts and being able to get AI to understand what we need. And sometimes you can get lucky and it'll give you exactly what you need, or it can listen to your prompts and actually adhere to those revisions properly and then spit back out what you need. But the problem is, let's say, because in everything with our industry, with post production and working with clients, we'll present something and then that client will have a note. And one single note on an AI generated visual effects shot, it might even be impossible to do. Even if that note is, can this piece of fire, can this flame happen, 2 seconds later or something like something simple. It's because now we're dealing with a machine who's just understanding prompts and it's AI. It's not like telling an artist, hey, this flame needs to start 2 seconds later, and the top wispy part of that part of the flame needs to curl that way away from the body. I'm just giving you an example of some specific notes that are small, but could be extremely hard, complex, and time consuming to create that type of revision with AI. So AI can help in a lot of the baseline hard time consuming processes that are more algorithm and based, and they can do some motion tracking. But when it gets to the point where you got to do those fine touches and those fine, where you bring your soul into it, where you bring, like we're talking about being a drummer, where you got to get that rhythm going with something, it doesn't calculate. You can't I don't think you can teach AI to have soul. I don't know. Um, I hope not. If you can, it's scary, if they could.
It's very interesting to hear it from your perspective because, like, in software engineering, there's a sort of meme going around called vibe coding, where it's like installing your creativity into these types of systems. And the problem with the code generation, the application generation, is very similar to the scenario that you gave, which is like the context windows aren't large enough to actually be able to make like a slight modification to an existing workflow that you're quite happy with, right? So it's super interesting. When you I don't know if you've talked about vibe before, maybe this interview, but, looking 5, 10 years I mean, there's a couple of interesting things, right? 5, 10 years ago, it was much more difficult to use an outsourced rotoscoping shop. Now today, there's, like, algorithmic rotoscoping that's probably only gonna get better. You're in an interesting position as a guy that does a lot of post in that you've always been on this crazy train of innovation. Like, it hasn't stopped since digital cinema started, and it doesn't seem like it's gonna stop now. So, asking you these questions is sort of like asking you the question 10 years ago. Like, yes, it's all going to change, but the fundamentals are going to stay the same. When you imagine 5, 10 years ahead, we talked about vibe, but, like, when you think about it, considering everything being in this business a long time, can you, like and we talk about it with the artistic nature of a drummer, but, like, where do you think there's vibe coding, what's vibe post-production? What is vibe editing?
In 10 years, or is that what you're asking me?
Maybe what is it now and what is it in 5 to 10 years? What was the same 5 to 10 years ago that's the same now and it'll be the same 5, 10 years from now? I don't know even fully where my question's going. I'm just really curious how it hits you.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what's been true since day one of me being in this industry for the last 30 years is directors and directors, put it this way, like directors will have their guy or their girl for editing, for example. Oftentimes you'll see directors who stay with the same editor no matter what studio they're working for, no matter what film they're working on. Clint Eastwood has a guy, I believe his name is Joel Cox, and we know Scorsese has his editor. Spielberg has their editor. Like these these directors, when they lock in creatively, spiritually, personally with another creative soul that gets them and understands what their intention is, even if they themselves aren't aware of what their intention is yet. You know, they they lock into these people. There's a bond, a creative and technical bond, primarily creative with these people. They get along with each other. They can they can sit in the same room together for months on end, shoulder to shoulder. you know, you can't do that with a lot of people. And I think it's instinct. So I think that's the same. We get DPs all the time say, I have my colorist. We don't need a colorist from Sugar. We have our guy. It's non-negotiable. We're like, okay, let's do it. We'll work with whoever, but that happens a lot where people get locked in together. And that is something that, how do you explain that? It's not just because they've made successful movies together, and they're just happy because they made money together. I don't think it's that at all. I think it happens because they feel creatively comfortable in collaborating with this person. They know that this person gets them and they get that person, that they can have a shorthand that may not exist. That definitely doesn't exist with other editors if they don't know them or work with them. And, I think that why it works here at Sugar in the world of post-production, why it's working, number one is because we have this cool model that it works well with the independent film workflow. But also because we're staff here. My team is staff. I don't hire out freelancers on every project and bring in new people for like filmmakers. Our business is repeat business and referrals primarily. I guarantee probably 99% of the people listening to this podcast don't know about Sugar Studios, but they've heard Deluxe and Technicolor and other, they've heard of the other big houses. You don't hear of us. We're not a big advertiser. Our client base is people who come back to us, and we have a staff of people that we have a shorthand within our team of the independent feature film workflow. And clients come back, they feel comfortable. We welcome them back with open arms, and they know they just have this sense of comfort. They have a sense of ease and confidence that everything and trust. Trust is huge. They know that we care, like care from our heart for these projects. My team, they're not aware if one film has a super high post budget or another film has a super low budget. They're not getting paid based on what the individual budgets are of a movie because they're on salary and staff. So they approach every movie, whether it's a small, tiny, independent doc for without any distribution, or a $20 million Netflix or whatever, a bigger project. We approach everything the same here, with the same amount of passion, with the same amount of understanding that the filmmakers are entrusting us with their babies, and we need to protect that. And they feel that. Even our visual effects artist I had dinner with last night, he said, I work with a lot of post houses, but when I go to visit those post houses, he said they don't even know he's there. They don't know who he is, because to them, he's just this email address that's forwarding them shots or posting shots online. And when he came here, everyone was like, "Oh, AJ's here. Let's make sure we get to say hi to AJ, because he's one of our artists who works remote out of Texas, and we rarely get to see him in person." And he came in and he said that was a real difference between what we do and what other post houses that he's had experiences with, that there's a family vibe, there's a familiarity vibe, there's a camaraderie, as there's camaraderie is something that happens on film sets, in the actual live action production of films, especially if you're on location on a movie with a crew for 30 to 40 days. You feel a bond with these people, and then when you wrap, everything usually dissipates. And the only time people kind of get together again is at some premiere, or perhaps in an ADR session later on. But after that, the director's kind of on his own with a couple of producers, with a whole new group of people over here at a post house. And we try to bring that collaboration that is on set and just extend it into the post process. So it's not like we're just this void, this repository, this post-apocalyptic void of worker bees that happen after all the sexy lights, camera, action has happened. We just continue the fun, and continue the passion and continue the artistry on these films after a wrap.
That's awesome. Can you share maybe you can, maybe you can't, but can you share a specific project or moment when a particularly challenging scenario forced you or the team to do something innovative under pressure? And how did that experience change your approach to problem solving?
I could say this. I'm not sure I could mention the name of the film, only because and obviously these questions weren't sent to me, so I would have probably had a better story. But I could tell you there's a film that we worked on, and we worked on for months and months and months, and it's a comedy, and it premiered at Tribeca, and it was an amazing premiere. And what we realized at the premiere was that it was the first time we saw the film in front of a great audience at the Apollo, right? And what we realized while watching the film with a live audience that was very reactive to the film is when they laughed at a joke that was meant to be laughed at, and then in the edit, we had another joke following that first joke about 3 to 4 seconds later in the edit. Super funny in the edit bay. One joke, beat, second joke. What we found out during this screening was that the laughter from the first joke completely wiped away the second joke. Nobody heard the second joke. So we had to go back. This was in between a premiere screening and delivery to a distributor. We had to go back and open up that beat, in between the first joke and the second joke in that one area, because if you're watching the movie and you laugh at that first joke, you'll totally miss the second joke. So the space in between was extended a second, I think 2 seconds. And that required a lot of work, a lot of hardcore technical work to even open that. If you change a movie one frame after it's delivered, it's a ripple effect that can be that extends into about 10 to 12 different departments that need to adhere to that. But we were able to do that in 2 days. And that included, we extended the shot. So now we had to color correct that extra second. We had to carry over the background ambient sound to cover that gap that we inserted into the movie. The score had to be edited because there was music and underlying current score going underneath that moment. So there was audio that had to be smoothed out and EQ'd. There was footage that needed to be color corrected, even though it was a second. It means opening up a session, finding those seconds in the camera masters, opening up the set. I mean, this is after the film was delivered, and we did it in 2 days because we had everything, all the assets were here. It may be kind of hard to kind of realize how difficult that is to somebody who doesn't really understand post-production, but you seem to understand that, if you open up a film for 2 seconds after it's finished, those 2 seconds, you might as well be redoing 5 minutes. It doesn't, and so we had and to do that cost over $50,000 in just costs in all kinds of redelivery, because we had to redeliver DCPs and assets and deliverables. That it was something that, and I have no idea if that even came close to answering your question, but that's my answer.
I mean, it's pretty powerful even still. Like, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's amazing. It is funny. I have so many different guests on the show, and like, it is fun to take a beat and think about the post-production process even now, because it is such an amazing constellation of complexity. It's awesome. I'm curious, Jijo, with Sugar Studios, your vision, do you envision expanding your sort of integrated studio model geographically or into different types of media like gaming, or do you plan to just continue to deepen your capabilities further in Los Angeles? What's the future for you in the studio?
My future is staying exactly in the lane that I'm in. And I'll tell you why, is because to get to this point of just saying we do independent feature films. Remember, I've been doing this for 30 years. I started in trailers, I did commercials, I ended up doing music videos and documentaries and short form and blah, 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 EPKs and sizzles, everything. So throughout my career, I've always been pulled in these various forays into other types of technology. Gaming. Yeah, I went down the gaming road and created a lot of content, gaming trailers and so forth. VR. We did a lot of VR stuff created VR content and got involved in the production of VR, played a little bit in the virtual production space, a little bit in the LED virtual production space and AR. I mean, it wasn't until 6 years ago where I just said, I'm going to try to bite the bullet and not. The reason why I think people foray into other areas that strays from their main trajectory is for money or for expanding the company to be a diverse media company. Now, that's not our thing. That's not our thing anymore. We made a decision, just like, let's not even do trailers anymore. I don't want to do trailers anymore. We do sometimes for the films that we're doing post on, but I don't push for them. I've spent years trying to hustle getting trailers from people. It's a very competitive marketplace, and it's extremely exhausting and creatively, it takes a lot out of you to do a theatrical campaign for a film. And I was all about it in my 30s. But right now, we made the decision to just stay in independent feature films. I love that. I love to see documentaries. I love to watch really cool independent films, and I want to work on the films that I like to watch. That I'm happy and excited and proud to be a part of, like content that I can really relate to. And I think since we made that decision that we're not going to go off in the future, like we're not going to foray into emerging AI technologies or VR or gaming or these other areas. I mean, there's enough work out there for everybody if they just look for it. I'm really happy of just being all about independent features. I love it, and I'm not going to stray from it. And everybody here is too. Everyone loves movies. We're all fans here at Sugar. We're all fans of movies, and
That's awesome. Well, Jijo, thank you for sharing with me a little bit of your insights, your background, your experiences in building Sugar Studios. It's super awesome. Before I let you go, like, you have to tell me about the Titanic.
oh,
I mean,
yeah, that was here. There's a this says Titanic. This is the Mir one. This is my dive date. This is the sub. Um,
okay, so
yeah,
if you're just listening to this, you have a literal tattoo commemorating
yeah,
the experience going to the Titanic. So,
yeah, for sure.
clearly the experience meant something to you
Oh yeah,
very much to the point where you think about it when you look in the mirror, you know?
all the
What
time, all the time.
why? What? Explain.
I was offered this amazing opportunity to be a part of this project that was it was a pilot episode for a documentary series that involved a father taking his son on a in a submersible to the Titanic. And this was way before that unfortunate tragic accident that happened last year. This was
About a year ago.
about 20 years ago, actually, that I went. Um, so, I was, this is one of my forays. I was doing trailers and someone offered me this project where I could direct a show and it involved the Titanic. And I was like, I'm in no matter what. I'm in. If this involves going to the Titanic, I'm in. And it turned out they didn't have everything all lined up as I thought, but we ended up making a deal with the Russian Academy of Science, who own the submersibles that are on a ship called the Keldysh that actually would do these scientific research type of explorations to the Titanic. It's the exact same crew and subs that you see in the beginning of the movie Titanic with Jim Cameron, where you see, they film it in real time. Those opening scenes in Titanic with the orange and white submersibles and the crew, the Russian crew and the pilot, those are all real. Like that was the submersible, the same team, pilots, everything. So we had 6 months to plan for this expedition. It was an expedition. We kind of said it was more of an educational expedition to be able to get permission to do this. There was some cash that switched hands between us and Russians. That was pretty funny. I'll probably get a call about that. But you know, it was just in a nutshell. So I had the opportunity to go. We went out for 5 days, and I was able to do a dive on one of those days. It took us 3 hours. First, we flew to St. John's, Newfoundland, and then we took a ship out to above the crash site, the location of the Titanic, on this research vessel, and then we got to get into the submersibles. Me, my producing partner, and the pilot of the submersible drop down. I think it takes 2.5 hours to get down. It's almost 13,000 feet. It's about 12,800 feet down from surface, about 2.5 miles deep. And it's 6,000 pounds per square inch. It's amazingly dangerous. And, for the whole time leading up to this expedition, I'm directing, I'm shooting this thing. I'm thinking of all the technical planning that needs to happen in order to make this a success. And it's no joke trying to coordinate a film crew and film at 13,000 feet. So there's a lot of logistics that took months and months and months to figure out. So the whole time leading up to the expedition, it was all about technically, how are we going to solve this? And when I landed at the bottom of the ocean, and it looked like the surface of the moon down there, 'cause there's no movement. It's smooth and wavy ground. And we were about 100 feet or so from the bow of the Titanic. It's the Titanic is in two separate areas. It's split in half, as everyone knows. The stern is where we're here, and the bow is over there. We hit the bottom, and all the technical prep and everything, like just all that sort of went away when I saw a shoe. The first I get down there after 2.5 hours of darkness, and then I saw a shoe in the sand. And then as we kept going, we saw some broken dishes, and we saw there was a bookshelf over here. And then we started seeing luggage. We started seeing personal items. They treated the leather with something that allowed a lot of the leather to still be preserved back then. Also, anything that was brass for some reason did not decay. There's zero oxygen down there, zero sunlight. So there's certain things that algae just doesn't grow on everything. There's the rusticles on the ship. You'll see those, but I saw dishes with a white Star Line insignia on it down there. 100 years later. So it made me realize that, oh wow, this is because you have this idea of the Titanic that it must be it's so famous, and it must be kind of managed in some way. It's like, must be touristy or so. You just get this feeling in your head that it's so freaking famous that it must be somehow managed, right? No, it's a freaking shipwreck where people died, and it wasn't a cleanup mission. I mean, no one's going down 2.5 miles to, make it presentable for anything. It was a shipwreck that's still there and decaying and falling apart, but still, the bottom line is you got a real sense that, holy shit, this is a lot bigger than a freaking documentary pilot that I was doing. It's bigger than how am I going to mount the camera to that pressure sensitive jib arm. Everything. It was just like, wow. And then you feel a sadness. You feel a real sadness. It's dark. It's silent. And it's incredible. We rolled up. We started coming up onto the bow, and you just keep looking up and up and up, and you're like, oh my God. Leonardo DiCaprio is on the bow with Kate Winslet. It's like a skeleton. No, but no, it was pretty crazy. It was wild, and it was definitely I didn't even realize it till after I went that I think it was less than 100 people have done it ever. I mean, that's another thing. Do you realize that you think, oh man, tons of people must have seen it, and there's only been, I think, it documented just over 100 people, including Jim Cameron and all his people, that have been to the Titanic. Probably more now, but yeah, it's not a widely experienced thing, and I feel honored and privileged to have experienced that.
Jijo, thank you so much for sharing that story. Like, really so interesting. And you give me chills just thinking about it. The magnitude of that, man, so crazy. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for joining me.
Yeah, you sure ended this on a bummer.
No, it's so much. It's so tragic, even all these years later.
Yeah.
It is so tragic for those people.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing how life reverberates, their lives even now reverberate into the present. And I don't know, there's something like really
Yeah.
special about that. And I think that there's also something special about making movies and telling stories. There's something vibey about it. There's something important about the vibes that we have as humans. And so I really appreciate being able to talk with you today on Production.
Thank you. It's really a lot of fun. Thanks, Cameron. I appreciate it.
So cool, man. That's incredible. You
All
give me
right.
chills. So insane.
Awesome.
On Production is brought to you by Wrapbook, with automated time card calculations, real-time production accounting, and payroll you can run with just a click. Wrapbook makes it easier than ever to manage your entire production from one login. To learn more about how Wrapbook is transforming payroll and production accounting, check out our website at wrapbook.com.